welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell. Hi, Rose.
Good morning, Christine.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. This second week of December.
Yes, and we have kind of a fun topic, we both think. We'll see what our listeners say, but before we introduce the topic, to anybody who hasn't watched Apple TV's Ted Lasso, you might want to stop listening right now, or if you've only watched the first season, because
Or if you have any plans to watch it, because some people probably.
Right. Well, maybe after listening to this, those who are on the fence will change their mind. But what's our question today?
Our question today is, can Ted Lasso show us how to do the rightest thing?
Yes. For those who don't know, who've been living under a rock, no, that's Ted Lasso is kind of a surprise hit from Apple TV, which who knows that was even a thing. I actually got a free subscription because I got a new iPhone last February, had no idea how to log on until my daughter, who's staying with us, got here a few weeks ago and announced we needed to watch Ted Lasso, and she figured it out. And we have now watched all but the first and second season, except for the last two shows. So I have made Rose promise she's not going to tell me what's going to happen in the last two shows. Rose,
I think I should tell our listeners that I'm a little bit more obsessive than Christine. Maybe you already realized that. But we had guests here over Thanksgiving, and my proxy little sister, and she had already watched them all, and she said, "You guys have to watch this." I didn't have an Apple TV subscription. Now I do. I have already watched both seasons because it's so addicting and it's so feel good.
Yeah.
And
I just want to point out
right now.
When was Thanksgiving? Was it even 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago this weekend?
It'll be 2 weeks ago this Thursday. So yes, I'm a little like, I don't have a life.
No, you know what? I totally agree. In what is a dark time, if you're a climate activist, if you're just kind of a human with a heart right now, it's hard. It's a hard time to be on this planet. And I think Ted Lasso helps.
It does. Well, it helps to laugh, but there's a different dimension to it. I mean, you laugh. The episodes are only like 40 minutes long, but you laugh and cry at basically the human existence.
Yes.
And the ridiculousness of it, and the brokenheartedness of it, and the authenticity of it, and the masks we wear, and who we are when we take them off, and amazing.
Yeah, all around, the basic storyline is a kind of relentlessly optimistic American football coach, and football means something different in North America than it does in the rest of the world. And he's recruited for kind of nefarious reasons, it turns out, but we won't say anything more about that, to coach what in North America both Rose and I would call soccer team, but in England and I think the rest of the world, it's called football. The most beautiful game, it's referred to, and he knows nothing about it. So that's kind of the basic storyline that everything builds around. But I totally agree. The humanity in it and the characters just all develop more and more. There's no really one-dimensional character, and I have to say the women in there, included, are multidimensional. And I was listening to an interview with Jason Sudeikis, who is the star and one of the co-writers. Another one of the coaches, Coach Beard, is also one of the co-writers and co-creators with Jason Sudeikis. I should pronounce it right. But he mentioned that the show wants to and is honoring the divine feminine. And when I heard that, I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Oh my goodness, we should talk about this. And of course, there's also an episode. So the title of our podcast episode today is based on one of the episodes. And I can't remember. I think it's episode 3 in season 2. It's called Do the Right-est Thing. And in that episode, one of the Nigerian players finds out that from his father, who sees him, he's been chosen to kind of be featured by Dubai Air, who's the sponsor for the soccer team. And he gets a call from his dad in Nigeria saying, do you know Dubai Air, which is not a real airline, so we'll just put it out there, is owned by an oil company, which I think is called, I've got it here, Cerithium. They call it Cerithium oil in Ted Lasso. That is destroying Nigeria's environment and I mean polluting it, but also
I think it's they've had an oil spill, or they're dumping, or they're
yes.
Yeah.
And the Nigerian government is complicit in that, in this. And so Sam has this decision and to make sort of between money and prestige, because he's getting a lot of positive feedback from the people around him about this, how good he looks and how exciting it is that he's this.
Well, he's building his brand. Right?
Yes.
That's the whole stick to that everybody's on right now, building your brand.
Yeah. And he has to decide if he will do the rightest thing. And again, I love that nuance, because it's like, do the right thing. It's black and white. It's, there's no gray. And Ted Lasso, I think, always reminds the viewers that there's a little bit of gray in most of what we do. And that's part of being human.
Good point. Yeah. The rightest thing. Maybe you can't go all the way from A to Z in your actions for clients.
Or here in Canada, we would say A to Z. But
okay. Maybe you can't go all the way from A to Z, but maybe you can go from A to L, or maybe you can just go from A to B. Take those incremental steps forward to do the right thing for the general good. Yeah. And the right thing for the planet.
Well, and so, and
podcast.
Right. And when he makes his decision, he's supported then by, it takes courage to do that, courage to turn down that money, that prestige, that branding opportunity. And then he doesn't just turn down the opportunity, he makes a point. And again, it's so interesting in this era of athletes taking a lot of flack for taking a stand. So
Colin Kaepernick, shout out to Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah. But in the end, he takes a courageous step, and he is then surprisingly supported by his teammates. And it's about, so Ted Lasso is about community too, right? Not a perfect community.
No, but what I also liked about it was his father, and his father actually, their relationship was authentic enough that his father could actually say, do you know that this is happening? And I think it's a good message for all of us, because we might assume that the person next door to us knows what they're doing, but they really might not. They might not have all the facts. So the fact that the father could call him out and say, do you know this is what's going on? And express disappointment, not disown him, but express disappointment, saying, you need to look at both sides of the coin here. I know this money and the publicity feels good, but this is the true cost. And I think more and more it's coming up, feels like it's coming to the surface as what is the true cost of things? What is the true cost? You go into the dollar store and buy something for $1. Well, that's really not the true cost of it. What the true cost is, the slave wages and the disposable throwaway culture that we're creating and yada, yada, yada. So what we see, it's the iceberg, right? What we see what we see above the waterline is just a portion of what's really going on. And we need to be looking at the bigger picture. That was a lot of philosophizing from one for one episode.
How can we do the rightest thing isn't easy. I have to think about the good place too. Not that I want to mix my metaphors or shows, but I don't know if you remember where
Chidi,
one of the main characters, who's certain he's gone to hell because he chose almond milk instead of because of the environmental. I knew I shouldn't have chosen almond milk.
The listeners, almonds just have a huge footprint because they use up so much water. They use so much water. My environmentalist son has always given his dad crap for that too, because he like loves to eat almonds, and Connor's like, Dad, do you know how much water these use?
Well, and I've switched to oat milk, which I mean, again, I eat dairy, but if I have the option in my chai latte or whatever, I'll use oat milk. Although climate change related, I've read that they're expecting a failure of much of the crops in the Midwest of the US and Canada because of the weather and the flooding and the extreme heat this summer. So we may not have the access to the oats. I actually read that food companies like, what are those, Quaker, the people who make Cheerios and that sort of thing, have been stocking up on oats. So what I was going to say, just to carry on what you were talking about, the true cost, I do think that Ted Lasso repeatedly, and again in a very gentle way, it doesn't ever hit one over the head with its message. This was the most overt kind of social justice message in that entire 2 seasons, I would say, because it also tackles like mental health in sports and toxic masculinity and so many topics. And if our listeners hasn't watched it, they're probably going, oh, that sounds like really heavy. And it's like, no, that's the thing. It's so interwoven just in what they do. And I just had the image of the Diamond Dogs. I'm not
yeah
that club.
Yeah.
So it's just so beautifully done. But I think it does question over and over, gently brings up the question of what money does to us as individuals and as a culture. I think Cerithium Oil episode kind of highlighted it, but the owner of the team has paid a heavy price, and that comes up again and again. And
and how we compromise our own values.
Yes,
it's you, as you said, you can see that none of the characters are black and white. We're all shades of gray. We all have ways that we contribute to the system and ways that we buck the system.
And being human just means that you're, I don't know, never just one note. There's so many notes in the characters that are revealed. Like most sitcoms are pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And there's so many, like Higgins, which I love that the character in Ted Lasso, that's his name in Downton Abbey as well.
Oh, is it really?
Yes. And there's actually, we've all decided we're going to watch it again to catch.
I am too, actually.
Yeah.
I got so much out of it the first time. I'm like, there's going to be more coming the second time.
There is very subtle references. Like at one point, I think it's Ted Lasso, unless it's Coach Beard, references Brian Weiss's first book. Oh, of course, now I'm drawing a blank, but it's all about Brian Weiss is a psychiatrist who
Many Lives, Many Masters. Is that him?
Yes.
Yeah.
He referenced
Oh, I missed that.
And again, it's not.
Now I'll be looking for it.
Well, and he doesn't say anything about it. It's just woven into the context of a conversation. Many lives, many masters. again, the fun part where they also brought in Great British Bake Off. Do you ever
Mhm.
watch that show?
No,
So
I've never seen it, but I know
that,
how fabulous it is.
oh my
Pictures.
goodness, my
Yeah.
family is big fans,
Obsessed.
and
Yeah.
I don't know, it's fun and it's delightful. So I guess the question is, can Ted Lasso show us how to do the rightest thing? What would
Well,
your synopsis?
one thing I wanted to add to those of us who are climate activists is that there is a certain sense of heaviness that the climate crisis brings with it. And the lesson with Ted Lasso is that you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. Is what my mom would have said. His constant optimism, which at first you're like, oh my God, this guy's going to drive me nuts.
And it does have a dark, I think they do tackle shadow work as well.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Because he's endlessly optimistic to his own detriment at times. But his positivity, his constant positivity breaks open barriers that lambasting or browbeating would never do. And I mean, it's presented in a way that in sports, you get these coaches that are like, oh, we're going to do it this way. We're going to be that. And he's just so soft and he's just so soft and lovely that your heart you keep being drawn closer and closer and closer. So I think to take that back to climate activism, can we do, those of us who are working in the field, can we be positive? Can we show the positive results of doing the right thing? Can we maintain that?
The rightest thing.
The rightest thing. Can we maintain that positivity? Because I think that people receive it easier. That nobody wants to be told that, they're on the wrong side. I don't know. It's also a big message about influence. I mean, they're talking all about branding in many, many episodes, but you see that he's a brand unto himself. Well, obviously the show's a brand unto itself. Because of his positivity, he's so unlike anyone you really encounter. And I need a Ted Lasso in my life. I know that. So I'm going to watch it again.
Yeah.
I just need to download that into my consciousness.
I mean, it's optimism and kindness, which is hard when you're a climate activist looking at literally the end of our world. Mm-hmm. But when you were talking, what came up for me is that believe sign. Mm-hmm. And maybe we all need that on our fridge or in our
that's the action. That's the action tip.
Okay.
Make a sign that says believe and post it wherever you need.
Okay. What does that mean in these times? For me, and I would think probably for Rose as well, although she can speak for herself, it's about believing that there is meaning, even when living in a time of climate emergency. There's meaning to our lives, to what we're doing, if we're taking action on climate change in particular, because it can feel futile sometimes. And I also, again, which I've said before, I believe that this is an evolutionary moment for human consciousness, and that we are being supported by forces beyond us that want us to make this evolutionary leap. And I would say that Ted Lasso, the show, not just the character, actually embodies that new paradigm that we're stepping into, because of the kindness and the forgiveness and the new modeling of masculinity that comes out. The old model is there as well in the show, but the new model is there. And also the fact that the female characters are so complete.
Well, it's interesting that you see the old model, and wherever you see the old model, it it's drawn in such an extreme that it's laughable, where the prior owner, one of the players, you see that several of the players, because they all have to be tough guys,
Mhm.
and you see that, like, the rules, the written rules or the unwritten rules that we live our lives by, Rebecca and Sam, you see them being broken over and over again, and you're like,
Spoiler alert.
yeah, it's lovely.
But yes, but also the relationship between fathers and sons are highlighted. So there's Sam and his father, but another one which is not as positive. And when it sort of comes to a crisis point, and again, the fact that the one character reaches out to, I'll say it's Jamie Tart, who's the one who has the difficult father. That's revealed early on in the show. But then what happens when he's publicly humiliated by his father? And
That makes me cry right now.
you know what? Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an incredible show. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a
Yes.
favor.
Mhm. Yes, it's spreading kindness and optimism at kind of a toxic time.
Divine timing.
There we go. So thank you, Jason Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt, and I think there was a Joe Kelly involved, and also Bill Lawrence at some
And
point.
thank you to the entire cast for
Oh,
providing light and love in a
so
time of darkness.
so amazing.
Yeah.
All of them. I love all of them. My daughter says Roy Kent is her favorite, but I'm not sure. I love all of them.
No, he is no, it's
Yeah.
really kind of hard to pick, but he's one of my favorites just because of
Yeah.
his salty language.
Yes, saltier than on this podcast.
Yes.
So, our good news today is something that we've talked about before. A few weeks ago, Prime Minister Modi in India backed away from ramming that farm bill that has had farmers in India protesting for over a year, and a few hundred people have been killed, maybe even more.
Those protesters, I mean, those protesters were on the street for months.
Oh, yeah.
Protest works. Protest works.
Yeah. Although it also apparently is coming up to an election time, so people are skeptical that Modi is just doing it to get elected and may reimpose it. But the good news is for now that the farmers who've been really, really pushing back at this globalization and standardization. And there may be two sides to the story, but the people most impacted, the small farmers in India, were definitely saying no loudly and clearly for months and months and months. And Modi has finally backed away from that legislation. So we put that under the category of wonderful news. And what's our sanity and action tip?
Well, our action tip is to make a sign that says believe and post it.
And I guess to
in your
watch
house,
Ted Lasso
wherever.
if you haven't.
And yes, and watch Ted Lasso if you haven't. Our sanity tip comes from the Third Eye Collective, which is a Facebook group that I'm a member of. And it's just really talking about taking a break, giving yourself self-care. I'm going to read it to you. It says, today's energy centers around taking a break from the routine. There's a sense that you might go overboard, but that's not a negative. It's as if you have found the time to actually kick up and have some fun. Time to leave some of those responsibilities for another day. Part of the holiday season includes having fun, doing things out of the ordinary, let loose of some of those expectations, and enjoy some of the unusual activities that happen around this time of year. That just really resonates. I went to a wedding on Saturday. My niece got married, and it was a huge wedding. And I haven't been to a wedding in years now. Well, because of COVID and other reasons. Just to be out dancing and I mean, the joy that you kick up when you're having fun, that light adds to the collective. So I would say it's very important for all of us to have fun. Do something that fills your heart, and let that joy out into the world.
Well, and I'll have to confess I have a big birthday coming up, which I'm not going to announce exactly which one it is. But Rose knows. No, I'm going to say, because I'm turning 60 in January, and your birthday is just a few days before mine, I think, my
Yeah,
dear.
you're January 7th. I'm January 2nd.
Wow, these Capricorns, we're just changing the world in our own little goat-like way. Um, I bought myself
Stubborn in our goat-like way. Yeah.
I bought myself an e-bike for my birthday, and it brings me great joy. I love it. And it's even more fun when my husband, who loves to cycle, goes out with me and I can pass him going up a hill. I have to say.
Yeah, baby. You've been waiting years to do that.
Exactly. About 35. And it feels good. So if it's not pouring rain today in Victoria, maybe that's what I'll go and do. But, thank you for that really important reminder as a sanity tip.
Just a quick update. What's going on with the weather conditions up in British Columbia? Because we talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. So there was another big dump of rain last week in the interior. I'm on Vancouver Island right now. We got some, and it was a couple of weeks ago when this big atmospheric river came in and basically destroyed almost all of the highways in the interior of BC, so cut off Vancouver from the rest of Canada. And here on the island, eroded the main highway that leads from Victoria up north. Although it was fixed within a day or two. They had it open at least 12 hours a day, and now it's open 24 hours, both lanes. My understanding is that for the most part right now, they are in major recovery mode and then are still bracing anytime there's more rain in the forecast. So, yeah, it's serious business, this extreme weather events that are happening more and more often because of climate change.
Are the roads passable again? I know at one point they were rationing gas.
Well, they still are up
They
until...
they really don't want people traveling in the area.
Yes, they extended it to the middle of December, so you can put 30 liters in at a time. I mean, of course, you can put 30 liters in and drive down the road and put 30 more liters in. Although right after all of that rain, gas stations were running out of gas. So you couldn't actually, and of course, yeah.
Because they couldn't get deliveries.
Couldn't get deliveries, and people were panicking. It's so interesting. People were panicking again. And so grocery stores were empty because people were panicking. So it's just an interesting time to be living in. I think we all need to become preppers in a mild kind of a way, so that we don't need to panic. You know, like just have some stuff in your pantry if you can. I always have at least try and have half a tank of gas. Again, we have a plug-in hybrid, which I can't remember if we've talked on the show. It's been stranded for 4 months waiting for the chip that it needs to drive. So we don't have it here because it's still sitting on a car dealership, the shop in Winnipeg, which is 4 provinces over, because it wasn't ready. It died the end of June, and we left for Vancouver Island the end of September, and it was not ready. So during a time when it would have been really nice to have a plug-in hybrid car, because it's perfect, right? If the power goes out, you still have gas. If there's a gas crisis, you can run on electric. But interesting times. We're going to have a conversation maybe in January about what it means when these disasters strike and how we can get ready. Okay.
Nice seeing you, as always.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from anybody your thoughts on Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
And, if we've inspired you to watch it or maybe not watch it.
That's this week's Friday episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you and for